huge turnout of Palestinians in Gaza has braved another protest against Hamas and called for an end to the war with Israel. The demonstrators marched through the ruined streets of Beit Lahia in the north of the Strip. It's at least the third such protest in Gaza over the past month, despite Hamas cracking down on any dissent. Negotiations over an end to the war are being jeopardized by both Israel's current offensive in the territory and Hamas' refusal to release its remaining hostages without a complete Israeli withdrawal. On top of that, the Israeli government says it will maintain its latest blockade of Gaza, which has again prevented humanitarian aid from entering since March 2nd.
They are desperate for food. Scenes from Nuseirat refugee camp in Gaza, where displaced Palestinians line up for meals. But not everyone here will get one. There won't be enough to feed everybody waiting in line. UN officials say hunger is spreading throughout the Strip as the remaining stocks of food run out. Aid organizations report that no food has entered Gaza for more than 6 weeks, ever since Israel resumed fighting and imposed a blockade last month. After a surprise visit to Gaza with Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Katz said Israel would continue to block aid deliveries.
The operation that is taking place is to pressure Hamas to release the hostages. And the more it persists in refusing, the more we will intensify the blows until it is defeated and all the hostages are returned.
And it's not just hunger that is spreading, but also hopelessness, with no relief in sight.
556 days and no one cares about us, whether Arab, foreign, American or Israeli. We are the people they call steadfast. Steadfast for what? We have nothing left to live for. We have no food, no drink, nothing left.
Continuing airstrikes aggravate the already dire humanitarian situation. Doctors Without Borders says Israel's military operations and the blockade have turned Gaza into a graveyard. Bombings here in Gaza City were said to have killed 10 people, including children, on Wednesday. The Hamas-run health ministry says more than 1,600 Palestinians have been killed and many more wounded since Israel resumed its military operation. Prospects for peace in Gaza seem far away.
We can now talk to Shaina from the Norwegian Refugee Council. She joins us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Shaina, humanitarian aid hasn't been allowed into Gaza for more than 6 weeks. How has that affected the ability of your organization to provide support there?
Well, we, quite frankly, are very limited in our ability to provide support because we've run out of critical supplies like tents. We've over 400,000 people who have been displaced in the last 4 weeks, and we simply do not have shelter solutions to provide them with. We are still able to maintain some degree of water trucking, though have had to suspend at many of the sites providing fresh, clean drinking water due to safety concerns or Israeli relocation orders in those places that we were serving. And as time goes on, we're going to run out of fuel to power our response. We've already run out of critical supplies. We still have a small stockpile of supplies that we can distribute, but the situation is incredibly dire. We're seeing that food actors no longer have parcels to distribute to families, community kitchens, even if they have food to provide to Palestinian families, do not have the cooking fuel or fire in order to prepare those meals. What we are seeing is a complete collapse of aid operations due to a 6-week-long siege that must be lifted.
Now, from a security standpoint, what's it like for your team to be working in Gaza right now?
It's incredibly scary, incredibly dangerous. We've had to suspend many of our operations because of the safety concerns, because the Israeli military refuses to acknowledge notifications of humanitarian movements, which previously, prior to the ceasefire in January, provided some slight reassurances that staff trying to head out and assist people would not be targeted. That system has not been reactivated by the Israelis since they broke the ceasefire over a month ago now, or about a month ago now. And so it's incredibly dangerous. It's difficult. Our staff are hopeless. They feel that they could be killed at any minute. They know that their families could be killed at any minute because there simply is no safe space in Gaza, not for civilians and not for humanitarians.
Now, a UN spokesperson has said that almost 500,000 have been displaced in Gaza just since the ceasefire ended. Can people really find shelter?
No, there's two main issues. Three rather. One is that there's no safe space in Gaza for to flee to. The amount of space that is not currently designated as a no-go zone by the Israeli military or under relocation orders is getting smaller and smaller. So trying to squeeze people into these spaces. Shelter assistance is nearly non-existent. Much of Gaza has been destroyed and damaged. And then for those that were able to receive shelter assistance during the ceasefire, when over 100,000 tents were distributed to families in need, many of those families do not have the ability to bring those materials with them, either because they have so little time to flee with their families, or because they are limited in what they can carry. It's very difficult to find transportation, donkey carts, cars, pedicabs, in order to move things. So families that are fleeing for their lives are unable to bring anything other than what they can carry with their own two hands. Often that's a child or an elderly or sick family.
Thank you very much. Shaina Low there from the Norwegian Refugee Council.
For more, let's speak to Georgia Tacey, a humanitarian advisor for the organization Save the Children. She's joining me today from Gaza. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us now that it has been more than 6 weeks that humanitarian aid hasn't been able to enter the Strip. How has that affected your ability to provide support?
100%. Where the aid blockade has led to a chronic and severe shortage of food, water, fuel, and critical medical supplies. And because of that, the World Food Programme have had to close down their bakeries that were providing people with their one meal a day. And there were already significant cases of malnutrition, but now that it's been over 46 days since any food or medical supplies has entered the Strip, it's significantly increasing the rates of infant and maternal malnutrition.
And so what kind of aid are you currently able to provide? Are there stockpiles available that can fill some of the gap? And how long might they last for?
So Save the Children has a small amount left in their stock, so we are able to do a limited amount of water trucking, being able to provide fresh water to people displaced across shelters. We're providing nutrition programs, screening both pregnant mothers and children for malnutrition, and when identified, providing supplemental feeding. We're providing a limited amount of child-friendly spaces where children can come and gather and socialise and process some of the stress and trauma they're experiencing. And where we can, trying to deliver shelter kits, bedding kits, clothing for children. But right now, there is no safe place on the Strip, including for aid workers. We've seen aid workers intentionally targeted, and so that has really hampered the entire humanitarian community from delivering what they do have in their warehouses. Stocks are limited, but it is also the lack of security for us as first-line responders that we can't actually safely go into these communities at the moment.
Now, paint a picture for us, if you would. We know a UN spokesperson says that 500,000 people have been displaced in Gaza just since the ceasefire ended. If you could describe what the conditions are like that we are seeing children there living in.
That's right. So families are getting anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes notification to pack up their lives and flee. And that is if they have cell coverage to receive some of the text messages that get sent by the Israeli authorities. And so they're being, in the middle of the night, having to flee to another location in the dark, often having to navigate other evacuated areas where military activity is occurring. They arrive at shelters in the middle of the night where a family might open a tent to them, where children will have to lie down on the ground next to strangers, if they're lucky. Otherwise, it is on foot, families walking around in the dark, just trying to find a place where they can shelter themselves from any military action. There is enormous outbreaks of lice and bed bugs and disease in some of the camps because of the lack of sanitary facilities, as well as any hygiene supplies coming in through the border. And what we're most terrified about is that blast injuries are the leading cause of death for children. And so they're at risk if they stay in their homes, and they're at risk when they flee their homes. And so right now, Gaza has the most amount of child amputees in the world, and a huge fatality rate from blast injuries because children have less bone density, they have less blood to lose. And for those that do survive, don't have the rehabilitation services to be able to recover in a meaningful way. And these will be disabilities for life. So not only have we got children out of school for 18 months, and 3 months ago we were talking about the ceasefire and how we were going to recover, but what you see now is families just concentrating on getting through the day. Because when the ceasefire collapsed, people were so crushed that right now we have families who are writing their phone numbers and their names down their children's arms and their spinal cords just to go to work, because they're so panicked that while they're at work or while they're at the market, their children might be impacted by an explosion and be taken to a faraway location or separated or killed. So it's an incredibly dire situation for children right now on the Gaza Strip.
Thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about it on DW. We've been speaking with Georgia Tacey with the NGO Save the Children, speaking to us today from the Gaza Strip.